Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Sweco's first webinar on the Sustainability Sun tool. Thank you so much for joining us today. We truly couldn't be happier to share this with you, and we really think the tool is coming at the perfect time to just take a moment and readjust our focus on sustainability and the challenges that we all face today. Please leave any questions that you might have in the Q&A box. They should be on the top right of your screen, and we will aim to answer them at the end of the session. But should we not have time to answer all of them, please be assured that we will note your questions and we will get back to you personally. Before we start, I'd like to take a quick moment to introduce you to ourselves, the Sweco delivery team, who will be introducing you to the tool today. Firstly, we have Kirsten Leggett, who is our carbon and sustainability consultant. She specializes in carbon management and climate change resilience in the built environment. We then have myself, Claire Chapuis, an environmental engineer in the bioenergy team. I specialize in delivering energy-related projects, including energy from waste, gas-to-grid projects, district heating, and smart city systems. The delivery team also includes Charlotte Bithell, a senior environmental consultant specializing in contaminated land, due diligence, and transactional services projects. Charlotte has recently qualified as a BRE SQL assessor and has assisted in the assessment of significant development projects. The delivery team is sponsored by Dr. Tanya Groth, Business Unit Manager for Urban Resilience. With a PhD in Socioeconomic and Financial Project Appraisal, Tanya is the lead socioeconomist for Sweco UK and Ireland. She has designed and trained ourselves, the Sustainability Sun delivery team, in a bespoke and rigorous multi-criteria approach to deliver sustainability suns in line with national and international best practice. She's also currently supporting us to obtain our internal accreditation approach, details of which are available on request. We will talk you through what the tool is, its importance in today's context, and its potential, as well as a quick demo of how we actually use it. We will also be joined by Elliot Smith, a commercial lead of a very exciting project we are part of in Peterborough, who commissioned the tool ahead of its launch. Thank you. But a bit more of that in a bit. For now, what actually is the tool? It was firstly created by our Sweco colleagues in Sweden and has only recently been translated to English. It is the first tool in the industry and the first tool of its kind that is able to assess and illustrate if and to what extent either a whole business, a portfolio of projects, or a particular project contributes to the UN SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals. It assesses sustainability from a holistic approach with the possibility of adding motivations and mitigation measures, as well as conflicts and synergies between goals should there be any. The tool is based, as I mentioned, on the UN SDGs, which you can see here on the screen. These are a set of 17 goals, which were created in 2015 by the UN and are aimed at achieving a better and more sustainable future for all. They provide a universal framework for action and cooperation for governments and businesses to measure their contributions to solving global challenges. The 17 SDGs are broken down into 169 sub-goals, between 8 and 19 per goal roughly, to narrow it down its focus. Our tool is able to assess projects against all 17 SDGs and 169 sub-goals.
So why should companies consider their performance against the UN SDGs? There is an increasing awareness of climate change and a growing urgency with which we all need to act. A growing intergenerational outcry for tangible change has accumulated in social demonstrations such as the school strike for climate, with young role models who now appear to be influencing policy and demanding change. There has been an increased public engagement with the UN SDGs and build-up to the UN's Climate Change Conference of the Parties in Glasgow later this year, COP26. This has been fueled as we realise that 2020 was the first year where we saw a real backtrack in the progress of the SDGs. This general increase in awareness has led to a greater understanding of the climate change impacts associated with commercial and industrial activity. Companies are being held accountable for past poor performance through growing activism and boycotting. Commercially, there has been a movement towards systemic corporate responsibility. Examples of systemic sustainability include zero waste to landfill policies and net zero carbon emissions targets. This needs careful consideration and full implementation as consumers are becoming increasingly aware of the phenomenon of greenwashing, a term first coined in 1986. In general, there is a gradual progression in society making more sustainable, informed commercial choices. The World Economic Forum Global Risk Report 2021 lists extreme weather, climate action failure, human environmental damage, and biodiversity loss amongst the highest likelihood risks within the next 10 years. Increased physical climate-related risks, including sea level rise, temperature rises, and increased frequency of extreme weather events, could result in both market risks, which could be reductions in the value of financial assets, and credit risks, which could be credit losses due to reduction in income and reductions in the value of assets used as collateral. There are also associated insurance underwriting risks associated with higher than expected claims against firms that provide insurance for physical risks. Between 1980 and 2019, climate-related extremes caused an economic losses totaling an estimated €446 billion in the European Economic Area. Within the financial sector, there is a real sense of urgency. Up to £639 billion worth of investment in low-carbon infrastructure will be needed by 2031 in the UK, and $90 trillion worldwide over the next 15 years. The financial sector has the capacity to drive change and climate action through focusing on the transition to net zero, the financing of new technologies, and enabling savers and investors to choose investments that align with their own values through greater transparency. For instance, easier identification of greener pensions and investment portfolios. Sustainable investing is becoming much more mainstream. Global ESG investing may account for $35 trillion by 2025, or more than a third of total assets under management. Aviva published survey data in October 2020, suggesting that 69% of investors considering ESG factors have started doing so within the last 12 months. Alongside a strengthening focus on ESG, there is a growing requirement for companies to report on their sustainability through mechanisms such as mandatory climate-related financial disclosures, very recently backed by the G7 countries, and the proposed mandatory human rights due diligence within the EU. Having a good handle on where your company is at in line with the UN SDGs will allow you to identify particular strengths and weaknesses, with scope to consider mitigation actions where necessary. This will become increasingly useful as more investments are assessed in line with ESG and mandatory sustainability reporting comes into effect.
The Sustainability Sun assessment is based on a rigorous socioeconomic methodology known as multi-criteria analysis. The purpose of conducting a socioeconomic assessment is to identify and analyse the direct and indirect impacts of a given project or organisational strategic intervention compared to the status quo or an alternate course of action. As projects are likely to have a wide socioeconomic impact, for example, the social value of the project, using socioeconomic analysis makes you look at all the potential impacts and rank accordingly. As an example, you've decided you would like to buy some new plants for your garden. You do all the research into which plants would be better and go to the garden centre to buy them. It won't just be you who gets a benefit from these plants. Your neighbour will also get a benefit. They'll enjoy the flowers, or a disbenefit. Perhaps they have hay fever. But these are outside the direct financial gains in buying the plants. There are three common types of socioeconomic analysis: cost effectiveness analysis, cost benefit analysis, and multi-criteria analysis. Cost effectiveness analysis and cost benefit analysis are typically used in financial modelling. These look slightly different when dealing with them in the socioeconomic analysis. Multi-criteria analysis is an approach designed to evaluate programmes which deliver multiple objectives simultaneously. For example, carbon reduction, fuel poverty reduction, job opportunities, etc. It is useful for programmes or strategies where the monetisation of direct or indirect impacts is insufficient or impractical. For example, what is the monetary value of health improvements to a family that's no longer living in fuel poverty? 2, you're assessing multiple projects delivering multiple outputs or objectives in parallel. This provides a like-for-like comparison, enabling clear-cut prioritization of outcomes simultaneously. It's possible to weight objectives according to their relative importance, and it's possible to forecast the impact of each project on achieving overall objectives and the relative likelihoods or timelines of each impact happening. It is used during the early stages of a project where there are multiple drivers with limited data, as it is the best use of time and resources. It is a decision-making tool or approach that compares projects rapidly and allows for objective assessments assessing the likelihood of achieving overall objectives and delivering a balanced portfolio of projects. All impacts are assessed, whether they can be monetized or not, through the application of a scoring system relative to an alternative situation, which represents the status quo or an alternative approach. This translates into a final value, which can be used to rank and identify the most attractive intervention or interventions. It is the least well-known and doesn't get used for financial modelling. However, it has been recommended by both the UK and Scottish governments with published in-depth methodologies. Our project sponsor, Dr. Tanya Groth, was lead author on the manual published by the Scottish Government.
So now that we understand the methodology behind the tool, what does the result of it actually look like? Via a user-friendly platform, we manually enter the goals per project or entity. There is the possibility of then adding motivations, which are an explanation of the goal, how it will be achieved, why it is important, but we think it's also a great free text space to add mitigation measures or future plans. Magnitudes of impact are then assigned, which you can see these on the left. These go from -2, which shows a detrimental impact on the goal from the project, to 0, that the goal is relevant, but the project actually has no impact on it, and up to +3, where the impact is very largely positive on the goal. Our tool uses this 5-point scale as it is based on the Likert scale. As mentioned, all sub-goals, all 169 of them, can be assessed. So the magnitudes of impact that you see on the diagram are the average of the magnitudes of the sub-goal within that specific goal. Conflicts and synergies between the goals and the sub-goals can also be added. This works as both an analysis of the knock-on effect between them, but also as a prompt to explore mitigation measures in the future. The result, which you see on the left here, is a sun with 17 sunbeams of varying lengths and directions, which conceptualizes and illustrates the current sustainability of either a project, a portfolio of projects, or indeed a whole organization. We offer 3 formatting options. The first one is a full Word report, which includes a breakdown of the sub-goals, motivations, all magnitudes of impacts, these scores that I've been mentioning, and conflicts and synergies, should there be any. This is by far the most thorough option and can be used, for instance, for funding applications or embedded in accreditation. The second option we offer is obtaining this result as an Excel worksheet, which is based more on the scores or these magnitudes of impact that we have given to the sub-goals and can be used for data analysis or manipulation. Lastly, you can also just have the image of the sun alongside a legend of the goals, which acts as more of a visual aid and we believe can be embedded in web pages or for marketing purposes. We will now take you through 3 examples of how the tool is actually used. Firstly, for a single project, then a portfolio of projects, and an entire organization. To begin with, prior to us starting our analysis, we undertake what we call a workshop call with the client to gather an understanding of the project and identify together the key drivers in terms of the 17 SDGs, as well as having the client rank them in priority. The delivery team ourselves can then take these primary drivers and further narrow them down into the sub-goals and assign scores or magnitudes of impact to them. The process is very easily malleable depending on the project. So for instance, the client may wish to be involved in the analysis, in which case we would undertake a longer workshop and guide them through the sub-goals that we believe are applicable to their project or portfolio or entity and assign scores together. Otherwise, we ourselves can undertake multi-criteria analysis ensuring that 2 or more of us are doing this together in order to promote a healthy discussion and a well-rounded decision on the scores that are assigned. I will now use an anonymized example of a transport project for which we have recently developed a sustainability sun for. The project aims to provide an upgrade to a section of a busy main road between 2 commuter towns. And upon discussion with the client, we gathered that their main focuses included, but were not exclusive to, firstly, road safety, secondly, relieving congestion, and thirdly, promoting active travel, in that specific order of priority. You can see this in the summary writing on the right. So we start with an empty gray sun, and then we look at the 17 SDGs. I mentioned road safety being the top priority for the client, which I know would fall under SDG 3, good health and well-being. Once I have assigned this goal, I have the option of narrowing it down to a further sub-goal. In this case, I know SDG 3.6, reduce road injuries and deaths, would be applicable. In the text box, we have added the client's motivations for this sub-goal. In order to keep this project anonymous, we have had to shorten the text, which would otherwise include further information about, for instance, the client's objectives, why it's important to them, as well as a thorough explanation of the scores assigned and why we have assigned these. As mentioned, road safety is the client's top priority for this project, hence this has been assigned a value of 3. We then have the option of assigning conflicts and synergies between any of the goals or sub-goals, analyzing the interconnection or any knock-on effect between them. Here, I am searching for conflicts, and on the right, I'm searching for synergies. I find a sub-goal for which SDG 3.6, reduce road injuries and deaths, has a synergy, and I can add further text to explain. In the end, following a thorough analysis of all the sub-goals we believe are applicable to this project, based on the client's top 3 initial priorities, we have expanded the sun to the one that you can see here on the screen. The project ends up being related to 12 out of the 17 SDGs, either positively, which you can see by the colorful sunbeams going outwards, with each square denoting a magnitude of impact, or negatively, which are the gray smaller sunbeams that are going inwards, such as SDG 13, climate action, or neutrally, which are the goals which are colored but have no sunbeams attached to it, such as SDG 4, quality education.
I'll now talk you through using the tool for a portfolio of projects. Our example of a portfolio of projects was using the Local Heat and Energy Efficiency Strategy, Sdgs, in Scotland. Using multi-criteria analysis, local councils can decide which projects, so energy efficiency projects such as installing loft or wall insulation, or low carbon heating projects such as installing air source heat pumps, to prioritise in their local authority area. It's possible to create several suns under the portfolio, or it can be used to create suns at different stages of a project for optioneering purposes, to show different points in time, or different projects within a portfolio. This slide shows all the goals as the project team thought would best fit the portfolio of projects from the selected council. Claire has just run through the specifics on how to select the relevant SDGs for the project a few moments ago. The process is the same for both the portfolio of projects and organisations. So using SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, for the Sdgs example, this slide shows the valuation of 3 sub-goals. This is then averaged out over the sub-goals to the one value that you will see in the sun picture. The project team decided on a valuation of 3 for the affordable and clean energy goal, as the objectives of the Sdgs project is to provide affordable and clean energy to as many people in the local authority area as possible.
Not only can the Sustainability Sun tool be used to assess individual and portfolios of projects, Sweco can also produce Sustainability Suns for organisations. The assessment will consider how the company or entity operates within the ecological, social and economic environment. Using Sweco UK and Ireland as an example, the Sun will assess several of the UN SDGs that may not be typically included in Sun's assessing projects or portfolios of projects, and would typically use corporate analysis. An example being SDG 10, reducing inequality, whereby assessors may choose to use company data, such as gender pay gap statistics and diversity data. The Sustainability Sun produced for Sweco UK and Ireland would include the assessment of SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities. As you can see, we have scored a maximum of 3 for this SDG, as Sweco plans and designs sustainable cities and communities of the future.
The potential for this tool is vast. This tool provides organisations and project teams the ability to track how they are performing against all the SDGs and is a good talking point to further aid discussion with the client. We have had great feedback from many industries since our launch on social media, and perhaps unsurprisingly, banking industry is singing its praises. The tool gives the opportunity for providing justifications and motivations rather than assigning a valuation to them, which will help in recommending improvements for the lower scoring goals. It can lead to more sustainable decision making and may be useful in the optioneering stages of projects. Finally, we think this will be an important visual aid for any marketing purposes or public consultations at each level, whether that's single projects, portfolio of projects, or organisations. So we're joined today by Elliot Smith, the commercial lead for PIRI, which is the Peterborough Integrated Renewables Infrastructure, the largest energy regeneration project in the UK. Sweco UK and Ireland sits on a consortium of 6 companies with Peterborough City Council to redesign Peterborough as a fully integrated smart city. PIRI works by linking the 3 vectors together of renewable heat, electricity and transport. Due to our extensive engagement in the project, the delivery team already had a strong understanding of the project. It was identified and agreed with the client that PIRI's main objectives were clean and affordable energy, reduction in fuel poverty, innovative smart grid systems, and sustainable cities and communities. We provided the consortium with the first formatting option of a full Word report, of which you can see the final Sustainability Sun on the screen. Elliot will now speak of his experience of working with the tool, which he commissioned ahead of its launch.
Thanks, Kirsten. Yeah, as you said, I work for Peterborough City Council and lead for the PIRI project, and I've been involved in smart cities for a number of years. So was particularly interested in this. Just to give you a brief introduction to PIRI, just to put it in a little bit of context, it's an Innovate UK funded programme called the Peterborough Integrated Renewable Infrastructure. It's a 2-year design project. We're looking at a place-based smart local energy system for the city, which is scalable and replicable. And as you said, it will integrate heat vector, electricity, mobility through electric vehicles, all under a smart digital platform. The idea is we will bring together energy generation, demand and storage. So it's a really complex and very ambitious and exciting project. Just to give you an idea of the scale, we're looking at up to 26 kilometres of cables for electricity and heat pipes, potentially 75 connections, around 60 gigawatts of heat and 80 gigawatts of electricity. And we're aiming at the end of this to reduce CO2 emissions by up to 80 to 90%, reduce bills for end users, and at the end of the project have a full investment case for delivery. We are leading the programme. As you said, Sweco are happily a partner of this, as well as SSE, Element Energy, Smarter Grid Solutions and Cranfield. So we've worked with Sweco since the initial application, which was back in 2019, and Sweco have been incredibly supportive. Got some excellent, really talented people in the team. And given that a lot of the project has actually happened during the course of the pandemic, some of us have never actually met, so we've been able to develop some really good and strong relationships virtually. And in terms of the Sustainability Sun, understanding the complex nature of PIRI, albeit that Sweco are a partner, being able to break down the elements of what PIRI is and present it in a way through the report and through the visual is a difficult task. But in terms of the Sustainability Sun, one of my previous roles, I was head of performance and information at the council, and I have a keen interest in data generally, and I completely understand how difficult sometimes it is to interpret data in a visual way that can actually make an impact on people, and that's why I was excited about this. So a visual representation of the sustainability aspects of this project, PIRI, is really helpful. It obviously, as has been said before, is based on a universal framework which makes life a lot easier. People can relate to it much easier. It helps understand where strengths and weaknesses are for the project. It's easy to communicate with stakeholders because just the visual representation of it. Often when you're looking at projects, things like finance will be discussed, the innovation might be highlighted, but not always the sustainability aspect. And this really helps bring that to the fore, and as has been said before, will be more important as we move forward. In addition to that, it's an independent assessment, so it's not just me as project lead saying we're doing great things. Actually, it's an independent sort of peer review almost, saying that, you know, yes, this is going to deliver some of the ambitions that we hope it will. One of the things that we're looking at over the next year as we move halfway through the project and looking at coming to the end and that investment model is how we generate investment, and this hopefully will be a powerful tool for that. And it's not just obviously the visual that you can see on the screen there, but the methodology that sits behind it and that multi-criteria analysis is really important. But I think for me, it's a really powerful tool for communication, just as a visual representation of a project, and it allows further analysis and further development. And using it for just one project is great, because it really helps identify those key areas that you're trying to target, or potentially the areas where we're not quite hitting some of the points that we want to. But when you start looking at it across the portfolio of projects, you can start building up a picture of where you want where you want to target activities and what the areas of focus should be on. So we're still very much working with the Sun because we've had it fairly recently, and we're looking at new ways to use it. But I've certainly learned a lot from this presentation already. So I think I may go back and have a revisit and think of other ways we can use it. It's very exciting. It's very useful, and I'm very pleased that we had it at an early stage. So thanks very much. I'll pass you back to Kirsten.
Thanks, Elliot. So we see this as a 3K service involving a short workshop with the client, 2 members of the project team conducting the assessment after the workshop, further discussions with the client, and then finally the desired reporting with a short turnaround time if required, in a picture, a Word or an Excel format as desired. So thank you for listening to this webinar. We look forward to answering your questions, and if you would like to discuss your specific requirements, please reach out to either of the emails on the screen and we can arrange a meeting to discuss specific requirements further.